The gas chamber, the electric chair, lethal injection, the machinery of death. Under American justice, their use is not cruel and unusual punishment. They are supposed to kill quickly, efficiently. But machines sometimes malfunction. Executions can be botched, and botched executions can become, to many observers, a display of excruciating cruelty. In April 1977, a man on trial for murder stood before the jury in Mobile, Alabama. The previous year, the U.S. Supreme Court had reinstated capital punishment. He told the jury he deserved to die.
My name is John Lewis Evans, and on January the 5th, I was involved in the crime of Eddie Nasser. I am also the one that did pull the trigger and shoot and kill him during the commission of a felony, a robbery. I've been at it a long time, and if you don't come back with a death sentence, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do it again.
The murder had taken place during the robbery of a pawn shop in Mobile. Evans had shot and killed the owner, Edward Nasser, in front of Nasser's 2 daughters. American justice granted Evans his wish.
It is therefore ordered on the judge that you, John Lewis Evans III, suffer death by electrocution. May God have mercy on your soul.
On death row, Evans changed his mind. He appealed his death sentence to Governor George Wallace and the U.S. Supreme Court. By April 1983, both had turned him down. The execution in Alabama's electric chair, nicknamed Big Yellow Mama, would be the first in 18 years.
We're dealing with a piece of apparatus that hadn't been used in a long time. And you can rehearse the drill, the routine leading up to an execution, but you cannot rehearse giving the juice to a human being to kill him. You can't practice that.
8 p.m., April 22nd, 1983. Guards lead Evans to the execution chamber, strap him to the chair, attach electrodes to his head and left leg, drape a black shroud over his face. 8:30 p.m. The warden flips the switch, starting a 30-second surge of 1900 volts. Sparks and fire erupt from the electrode tied to Evans' leg.
The electrode on his leg explodes. I mean, there's like, I think, a pop and a flash.
Something has gone wrong.
This neon red flash appears over his head. I mean, and I'm thinking at the time, it's like a fiery halo. There's smoke drifting up around his face, drifting like you see smoke drifting from a crowded ashtray.
After 30 seconds, the electricity stops. Amid the stench of burning flesh, 2 doctors enter the chamber. Both detect a heartbeat.
John Evans has not been pronounced dead yet. Apparently, the first charge did not kill him.
Evans is unconscious but alive and breathing. A guard reattaches the electrode to his leg. 8:34 p.m. A second surge of electricity. More smoke comes from his head and leg. Again, the doctors examine Evans. Again, they report that he is still alive. Evans' lawyer pleads for clemency on the grounds of cruel and unusual punishment. At his request, prison officials phoned Governor Wallace. Wallace says to proceed with the execution. 8:40 p.m., a third jolt. Now Evans, his body charred and smoldering, is pronounced dead.
John Evans was tortured tonight in the name of vengeance, in the disguise of justice.
Opponents of capital punishment say as many as 10% of executions are botched in one way or another, and that what happened to John Evans was cruel and unusual.
Cruel and unusual, I don't know. I mean, I remember thinking that if you're looking at efficiency, I remember thinking at the time a guillotine would be more efficient than what I saw.
Some advocates of the death penalty contend they're not troubled by the nightmarish pain that a murderer such as John Evans may have suffered in his botched execution. But those who administer the death penalty say they do not share that view.
I've heard victims say, you know, I don't care whether the person suffers. Maybe they need to suffer during the execution. But certainly we want to do everything we possibly can to make sure that's not the case, that we're carrying this out in a humane way.
The gas chamber is a form of execution which some regard as inherently cruel.
We had evidence concerning how you die. You're having a heart attack and you're suffocating, and it's really painful while you're consciously dying, even though you're trying to suck in as much of the poison as fast as possible to get the dying over with as quickly as possible.
5 months after the Evans execution in Alabama, defense attorney Dennis Bolsky tried to prevent another one in Mississippi's gas chamber. The condemned man, Jimmy Lee Gray, found guilty of raping and murdering a 3-year-old girl, a crime committed while he was out on parole for the murder of his 16-year-old girlfriend. Just after midnight on September 2nd, 1983, Gray was locked inside the gas chamber at Parchman State Penitentiary near Jackson, Mississippi. As the wisps of the cyanide gas rose through the chamber, Gray took 3 deep breaths, trying to speed his death.
He kept writhing in his chair and throwing his head back like this, and about that far back was this big metal support pole. So what kept happening was this big, eerie, banging, vibrating noise.
Nervous witnesses checked their watches. 4 minutes passed, then 6, 7, 8. Gray kept groaning and slamming his head against the pole. At that point, prison security demanded that all the witnesses, including Gray's attorney, leave the viewing area.
They didn't believe us when we were arguing that it was cruel and unusual punishment. I don't think they really believed us that our client would stay alive and be conscious for that long.
The official prison log would show that Gray suffered cardiac arrest 2 minutes after the gas began. Prison officials said Gray was already dead when his head was snapping back, that it was post-mortem reflexes.
That man was breathing when I was told to leave and was told that he was dead, and he was not dead. And he had been suffering and trying to breathe and strangling for the period that I was in there.
After the Gray execution, Mississippi prison officials added a head strap to the death chair to prevent a replay of the gruesome scene.
Regardless of what method is used, it is a very haunting and difficult situation for those who have to carry it out, to watch life be taken.
Where I draw the line is that we are a nation of laws. We had the framers of our Constitution who came to this country and said, we don't want to have, we're not going to burn people at the stake, and we're not going to torture people. We're not going to have cruel and unusual punishment.
In recent years, many states have turned to lethal injection, widely regarded as a more efficient and less cruel form of execution. But even this method can be botched.
There are stories about lethal injections where they can't get a vein, and there's this terrible scene for 10, 15, 20 minutes where they're trying to find the vein to stick the needle in. The human error factor is always going to be present, and some executions are going to be more painful than others. There's no perfect way to do it.